Mm. Hey, good morning, friends. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo. And as always, thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing to the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, this literally does not work. Let's get open for business here on this Wednesday, this hump day. Guys, we've got half of the first week of the offseason already in the books. Not that many more until the NFL season. We only have 209 days. Uh, okay. Well, thank you for tuning in to this morning's edition of Don't Sleep on the Dallas Cowboys, because you literally cannot sleep on the Dallas Cowboys because things happen late in the evening, late at night, first thing in the morning, so you want to be up to speed. That is America's team. And now that we're in the offseason, which I got to say isn't really an offseason because football never really sleeps. It never really ends because the teams are hard at work right now trying to figure out and shape the team that they're going to be in the 2019 season. The players, they're working on getting their bodies together, getting off-season surgery, getting back into shape, letting those bruises and everything heal so it doesn't end. It really is an all-year sport. Granted, there's only games for a few months, but it's still building up to that season. And what we're going to do between now and the beginning of the season is go back to doing fixing the boys. When you watched that Super Bowl and you saw the Rams look terrible. It would have been a better game if New Orleans had been there, or even, dare I say, our Cowboys would get there. I can't hate on the Rams because they did enough to make it there. In fact, they've been there 3 times since the last time we've been there. So I don't really have room to talk and downplay them because, don't hate the player, hate the game. But we have to figure out what we have to do to get there. And that's where we're going to start dissecting the body because the body is dead. It is cold, and figure out why we did not make it. And we've got to look at ourselves and say, what can we do better? What players can we have in here? And if nothing more than anything else, the NFL is a copycat league. Teams will look at your team and say, what made you successful and how can I replicate that? And as much as I hate New England and am sick and tired of seeing New England in the Super Bowl, you got to give them credit because year after year, they're there competing for one. And here's what's crazy is you're looking at Pro Football Focus. This is the postseason, so they're putting out as much information as they can to keep us engaged. And they've done their rankings of players, their top 100. DeMarcus Lawrence, they ranked as the 51st best player in the NFL. Jalen Smith, 53rd. Vander Esch, 58. And Byron Jones, 74. That's a hell of a lot of firepower on the defense. And it's amazing what they've been able to do. When you think about the amount of Pro Bowlers that we had on our team, it's not a matter of not having players, because let's take a look at New England. You know how many Pro Bowlers New England had this year? The Super Bowl champs, the team that literally goes to the Super Bowl every year just about? 2. Tom Brady and Stephon Gilmore. That's it. That's the list. This team that every year goes to the Super Bowl is never in cap hell. The Super Bowl champs still have $17 million in cap space. So here's the thing that you got to understand about New England. It's not about having a whole bunch of superstars. I mean, of course, they got the Gronk. They got Tom Brady. But other than that, and Gilmore, other than that, you don't have a lot of name big salary guys on the team. As you go down the salary cap, Tom Brady's $27 million, Gilmore's $14, Devin McCourty's $13, the Gronk is $11, and Hightower's $10. Below that, the next one is Marcus Cannon at $7.5, Dwayne Allen $7. You start looking at that, and what you have to understand is New England's model isn't about having a whole bunch of Pro Bowl players there ready to go because if you lose one of those guys, then you have problems. What they realize is we're better off having 53 guys better than your 53, not just the top 5 or 10 players. So when you lose one guy, you can plug somebody else in that can take up the slack. They may be a slight step down, but it's not like going from Tyron Smith to Chaz Green. And they develop roles for all of the players on the team. It may be that your role is only in a certain package, but that package is something different than what the other guys are able to do. See, New England would find a way to use a Cole Beasley more, like they did with Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman, the MVP, ate them up. They find things to do with Gronkowski. See, New England would find packages for a guy like Rico because they look and say, that guy's 6'8". He would be a mismatch against this cornerback who's 5'10". And that is, my friends, in a nutshell, the biggest problem with the Cowboys. You could look at the season before. Our biggest problem was we had best talent, starters. You could take our starters against anybody else. But once you got past that first layer, once you got down to the second tier, once Tyron Smith and Sean Lee got injured, or Des Bryant, the talent below them was such a drop-off that the team dropped off a cliff. Now, make no mistake, we've begun the process of filling in better. When we lost Tyron Smith, we had Cam Fleming. I don't know that he's ready to be a full-time starter for the Cowboys or not, but it wasn't as big a drop-off as it was to Chaz Green. When Connor Williams went out, you had Xavier Salfalo, who stepped in. You know, when Zach Martin went in, now you had, Connor Williams be able to go in and pick up the slack. So it wasn't as good an offensive line as it had been, but it was damn good enough to keep winning. It was respectable. And in the same sense, losing Sean Lee, we had Van Der Esch. And this is where my question comes in, and maybe the reason why we weren't in the Super Bowl, because it was history repeating itself. In 2016, we should have been in the playoffs. I mean, should have won a playoff game against Aaron Rodgers. But what we did was we ended up taking Morris Claiborne, who started out the season having a great season, had been injured for weeks, and started him in the Super Bowl after not playing meaningful minutes in forever. And in that game, I remember on a 3rd down and long, he had a touch in the face, 15-yard penalty on what would have been an incompletion on one of the drives that Aaron Rodgers went down and had a touchdown where we got down 21-3. He didn't complete that whole game because his body just wasn't ready to play, but they felt the need that we need to start that guy, even though he hadn't played in like 6 or 7 weeks. And we repeated that same mistake against the Rams. And when I say stuff like this, people will immediately turn it around and say, well, you're just hating him. I said the same kind of thing about Tony Romo, and it wasn't a matter of me not respecting what Tony Romo had done or Tony Romo's career, but at some point your body begins to fail you and you cannot compete the way you did before. In some people's mind right now, they think Tony Romo could walk on the field right now and be a Super Bowl champion. But the reality is, after being out for that length of time, you don't just pick it back up. And as you get older, it's harder and harder to recover. And so I question the Dallas Cowboys starting Sean Lee and pulling Jalen Smith for Sean Lee and then pulling Van Der Esch for Sean Lee in that game. It's not saying that Sean Lee can't play, because I think he can, but he went in that game pretty much cold. And when you have, as Pro Football Focus has, Jalen Smith as the 53rd best player in the NFL, and Van Der Esch, the 58th, and Sean Lee coming off of the worst year of his career, I question why you did that in the playoffs. And these are the subtleties, the little things that you look at, the minor things that make the difference of being the Rams in the Super Bowl and being the Cowboys at home. It's those real-time decisions, and they may seem minor at the time, but they make all the difference in the world. So we have to start looking and saying, are we better off having a 53-man roster that's the best, or are we better off having just a bunch of all-stars? I got to tell you, New England's model is, when guys get ready to get big, before we have to pay them, trade them, get picks, or let them go in free agency and get back compensatory picks. Because in the end, the way you build that roster is through the draft. And we need to learn that lesson. So guys, we've got lots of work to do. I've got a lot to do in here as well. I've got to head out to the lumber store and pick up, about 100 board feet of oak and some plywood and things like that, because I got to get building some stuff. So as always, friends, I want to thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing to the Joe Boo Sports Report. I'll see you soon.